and we'll get started. I'm sure she'll join us. I hope so. I just don't want her to miss too much. Much of this here, this is her realm anyway. So, okay. Let me minimize my. Okay, here's where we left off. We were about to do a very simple example to calculate variance and standard deviation. This should be simple or right up your alley too, Aubrey. So I used a simple data set, three set data, and this is so small. Okay, we already know that sample sizes would be much larger. I just wanted to show you the formula. So you'll get into your self study, and we'll send you some questions, and you'll find a whole bunch of questions out there to figure out standard deviation variance if you don't know how to do it. But it's a couple of step process. Okay, the first thing you do is you take the data set that they give you and you find the mean. The mean is a simple average of the three elements in the data set. So here it is. The average is 4. Okay, I did this on purpose so that the math came out easy. So once we calculate the mean, then we calculate the variance. That's the average squared deviation of each number from the average. So here's the same formula now with this applied to it. So see the first 1 minus the mean squared, then 4 minus the mean squared, then 7 minus the mean squared, divided by the 3, came to 9, plus 0 plus 9. Okay, as you can see, this one hit right on mean. The variance comes out to be 6, okay? You take variance and you calculate standard deviation. Standard deviation is simply the square root of that variance. So you calculate variance first and you get standard deviation, or the other way around. If in the example they give you the standard deviation, you do the square of that and it comes back to 6. So these two formulas work back and forth to each other. The reason they have you calculate the standard deviation is because they want you to apply Six Sigma principles to quality. Okay, in other words, it was part of the quality tools that I started to end up showing you. The next one I'm going to show you actually is show you the upper and lower control limits. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to set the upper and lower control limits of acceptability of a process running. And that's called Six Sigma. That's 3 standard deviations either side of mean. So in this case, when we came up with a standard deviation of 2.45, we mean plus or minus from the mean, okay, of 4. So plus or minus out to 7.35 either side. That's 3 standard deviations to either side of, both sides of the mean. So if the process runs between plus or minus 7.35, it's in control, and I'll show you what that means. But maybe I clicked it too fast, but you do understand variance and standard deviation and why Six Sigma calculates standard deviation, right? That's not really part of my class, but you're okay with that? You're okay with that, right?
Yes, sir. I'm okay with it.
Okay, Aubrey, I'm going to keep going then. Okay, so of the 7 basic quality tools, one I'm going to show you here is called a control chart. It also becomes a run chart over time. But what this is we're measuring a process. We're measuring a process over time for its performance, okay? And we just, as I just showed you, through Six Sigma calculations, right? We set the control limits of the upper and lower control limits at 3 standard deviations either side of the mean, okay? And again, you'll see questions about this on the exam. Know what's the different Six Sigma levels, what 2 Sigma, 3 Sigma. It's one of those tables that in the formula sheet that I sent you. Just know that there's quite a difference. All right, what they want you to know is see the difference between 4 Sigma, 5 Sigma, and 6 Sigma is a big deal. All right, it's only 3.4 defects per million opportunities if you're running at 6 Sigma. What you need to know for the exam, though, okay, are a couple of points about a control chart, all right, that a process is out of control if first off, if a single data point is either on anywhere outside of the control upper and lower control limits. For the exam, that's the answer. Not everywhere in the world thinks that way. There's things called outliers. So sometimes you get an outlier for absolutely no reason at all, and it never happens again. So I'm not going to tear the process apart. But for the exam, this is the kind of things you need to know. If they ask you about a control chart, and the one of the rules are that if a data point, if one of my measurements ends up measuring it and it's outside of the control limits, this process is out of control. The other qualification to take it out of control is that 7 consecutive plots. So here I start counting from here, and if let's say I get 7 points, all on one side of the mean, that's also out of control. They have to go back and forth within 7 consecutive plot points. So either one data point outside of control limits, or 7 consecutive plots on one side of the mean or the other. Okay, that's the thing you need to know for the exam. All right, very simple. All right. The other thing are these. Just recognize what these are. These are scatter diagrams. And what they do is they show, or they're trying to show correlation. It's the dependent variable X against independent variable Y. And so, I'm sorry, the other way around, independent variable Y and dependent variable X, seeing if Y changes, what happens to X, okay? So does it also go up? Does it also go down? We're looking for what's called correlation, all right? So if we see if one thing happens, it tends to make something else happen. Doesn't necessarily mean causation, but when we see things like correlation, it's worth further analysis as what we're looking for. Because remember, we're looking for root causes of problems and stuff. So when we look at things like scatter diagrams, we're looking for relationships between two variables to see if the change in one has a direct effect, either positive or negative on the other. And you can see these scatter charts are either tight, going in a direction, one direction, positively, negatively. You don't have to know how to use these, just know of them and what you would use them for. I'm looking for correlation and possibly causation, but I'm going to find causation in further analysis. Okay, that's what you needed to know about that. Benchmarking, I told you compare your projects to best practices. Benchmarking is done both internally and externally. What I mean is best practices, what's the best that we can do, and what's the best that we do against the rest of our competitors out there to do the same thing that we do. Something called design of experiments, where I think Jill just joined us. Hold on, let me see. Excuse me, just let me say hello to her, Aubrey, and we'll keep on going. I'm glad you.
Hi, so sorry.
No, Jill, that's fine. I'm glad we only started a few minutes ago,
Okay.
and I just did.
They took my laptop, and we're getting upgraded, and it totally took longer than expected. I'm sorry about that.
Hey, that happens. That's why I record these things. That's why I record these things, and I'm glad we only really started about 5 minutes ago, and you only miss standard deviation and variation calculation, stuff that you know in quality. And I did control charts, and I did scatter charts. So now I'm into tools and techniques. I'm just moving on. So I'm glad. Welcome. Stop me if there's anything that we need to do here, but we're going to be through planning this evening. So that's great. Okay, so here we are. Like I just mentioned, benchmarking, design of experiments. All right, it's another modeling technique. You see, I've pointed this out to you a bunch of times. We use these in scheduling and cost forecasting and a lot of stuff that today is so much more superior than when I first started. When I had hair, back in the day when I had hair, we did everything on calculators and adding machines, and oh man, I'm old. Today, everything's modeled, all right? Like I said, we used to build actual mock-ups, physical mock-ups in construction. No longer. I just do it in software and give you a virtual tour. And if you say, no, I want to change it, we just do that virtually. I don't even have to change the mock-up. It's so much. And this is one of these here for quality, okay? Just changing up variables and changing up states for design of experiments. What you're looking for is the ideal outcomes, all right? Statistical sampling is another quality tool. This is where you select parts of a population because, let's say you're making 10,000 widgets every hour. Okay, you're not going to physically inspect every single one of them. You just can't do it. Okay, And while those widgets are coming down the ramp, okay, you hear that music from the Bugs Bunny cartoon, that dun 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 dun. And they're coming down so fast, there's no way. You gotta sample them. So there's different ways to sample a population. There's random sampling, and that's just kind of grabbing one here and grabbing one there. Okay, works in some applications. I don't think J&J appreciates it. They're probably here's where I'm glad you got in, because this is, if there's some place you can really lend your expertise to, it's here in this sampling techniques, systematic and stratified, for example. Maybe you could can you explain those maybe even better than I can? These two samplings, or do you know them? Or I don't mean to embarrass you.
Oh, yes.
I'm just saying that there are that I believe that stratified is that where I'm looking at like almost a demographic. I'm looking at a slice of particular with particular attributes, and those are what I'm sampling. Okay, systematic is every third one or something to that effect, right? So right, thank you. It's not my field, okay, and I don't want to oversimplify something that really has a lot of power to it, because sampling is really the way to go if you know how to do it, and you know how to account for smaller sampling sizes and in statistics and all that. You would use. I got to tell you that one of the tools that you would use is Minitab. You guys use Minitab, don't you, Jill? It's
Yes.
yeah, it's a great statistic tool. Okay, it really is. Just click the buttons, tell it what you want it to figure out, and it does it for you. So, and it just gets easier every time I see those folks at a convention or something. Additional planning quality tools, for example, brainstorming. There's force field diagrams and nominal group techniques. These are things, again, for the exam, you just need to know of, okay, that you're going to, just like we've done with a lot of other things in the other knowledge areas, they're not going to ask you a force field question. They're just not, okay, but know of it, all right, that you have a bunch of tools at your disposal for quality assurance and quality control. You're going to have meetings. So quality is the topic of meetings. So like I said, do you remember that you're going to have to figure in cost of quality, all right? And that's probably going to be one of the questions when they talk about quality in the PMP exam. They want you to make sure you take it in the complete consideration, not just for its value, okay, and because you're going to align it to requirements and all that. But you need to figure it in as part of costs. So you're going to be scheduling people and time, and it all runs into costs. They want you to know this, okay? So that you do that. They have a quality management plan. That's the .1 plan, and it's still just like I've been showing you time and time again. Rules of the road. Here's the place where we put project governance in. And if we get in early enough, we put in metrics and measurements and rules and fences that we like. And not just we like, but we know work, okay? And we know are going to settle problems and later, all right? With a process improvement plan. That's the working plan for quality, because that's what quality really is at its heart, is about improving. We measure, we improve, we measure again, we improve some more. That's what continuous process, that's what a continual improvement is about. It's what the whole PDCA cycle that never ends is all about, okay, is that it's continuous improvement. So you have a working plan for that. And the metrics, just like everything else that has real value, you have to be able to measure it. You have to be able to measure that you got there. And you do it in several different ways for several different things, as you did in costs, as we did in scope. You're setting rules and fences that can be measured. Measurements that mean something as we start to put plan and execution and delivery together, okay? We're going to use quality checklists. I told you checklists are so powerful because they're so simple. I mean, they go back all the way to ancient times, I guess. And so you don't miss anything. You just don't miss anything. A checklist is just great. Now, we only have two more processes left before we're completely out of the planning process group. First off, I want to say that as far as schedule, as far as our pace is concerned, I think we're doing pretty well. At this point, I feel like we're about a half a session behind where I would have liked to have been. So I did a quick, and I thought to myself, it would have been clever to mention that as earned value management. That let's say our class is a project, okay, end to end, it's going to be 20 half sessions, right? I planned that at this point, even before we started it tonight, that we'd be through 14, and I'm figuring we're through 13. So my SPI is 0.92 or something. Not too bad, right? But I thought I'd point that out. We'll catch up. But I just got to say, we have two more processes here. I'll show you some financial calculations. We'll be out of planning. We'll take a break. Then we'll come back and we'll do the execution processes. There's only 8 of them. One I already showed you already with, which was 12-2. Remember when I said conduct procurements? It was one of my pet peeve things. So I really have 7 to show you. But as I show you the execution process, I'm already talking about the monitor and control processes quite a bit because they go hand in hand. So the next process group goes pretty quick too. You'll see what I mean, but let's finish up these last 2. There's only one process in each of these 2 knowledge areas in the planning process group. So I want to show them to you. Stakeholder management, we've talked about quite a bit already about how you should manage your stakeholders, starting with and really basing it on that stakeholder register that you created from way back in the charter phase. This was where you got to know your stakeholders. And if you're smart, as you can see now, you have a whole bunch of knowledge areas that you need to talk to your stakeholders about. So you want to kind of start doing that early. This means that you go to your early meetings kind of prepared. Start asking them thought-provoking questions is what I mean. Think about your stakeholders. They know what they know, right? But maybe they haven't thought about the risks. Maybe they haven't thought about the quality requirements, things like that, okay? And you ask them questions like that, and they say, and maybe they say to you, Clark, I never thought about that. Good. Do me a favor and start thinking about it because I'm going to ask you more questions in the realm of risk when it comes to this. So you got to start your stakeholders from the beginning, and you're looking at it through all your knowledge areas. Might as well start talking to them early. It makes them start thinking too, right? So when I say about managing stakeholders, okay, you want to, at first, they're telling you what they want, okay? It's almost like the relationship kind of turns later where you're managing their expectations. But they're the ones that tell you what they want in the beginning. So you got to do a good job of extrapolating information from them. So all those techniques that I showed you, with the focus groups and interviews and, blind email, the Delphi techniques and all that, this is great. You apply all this stuff early in stakeholder management because now you're going to manage that relationship. Take a look here as I've done with each one of the knowledge areas to this point. I show it to you in a screen first, complete. Again, I'm not teaching them by knowledge area, but I want you to memorize them this way. But I'm only going to show you 13.2 here in the planning process. But I want you to see that that's an anomaly. That's something different. It's not the dot one, is it? And we've seen nothing but in the planning process, the 4.1, 5.1. Notice we've already used up the dot one process. That was back in the So this is a difference, and anything that's different is something that'll help you memorize, right? It'll help you memorize. It's something a little different. Stakeholder management, the actual plan itself, the dot one in reality is dot two, okay? It's dot two. We're doing all what we would normally do in every other dot one, which is define all the roles, responsibilities about managing our stakeholder expectations, how we're going to come up with our requirements and manage their expectations and move along. PMBOK's going to be big about trying to you gauging where your stakeholders are in an acceptance mode. Are they pro project? Are they anti project? And you're going to move them along. I find that's powerful to some degree. In some cases, I don't want to do that. I think I would rather that that those folks come along organically. When they start to see results, that's when real naysayers come along. But I don't want to preach. Let me go ahead and show you 13.2. First off, remember, it's based upon, when we talk about managing our stakeholder relationships, here's where we started. This is our stakeholders on a plate. There they all are. We've named them. We've decided. And again, the attributes are, we continue to add columns as we know our stakeholders. And when we interview our stakeholders, we go prepared, right? We go prepared with our interviews, ready with a list of questions, a couple of questions, Early questions are thought-provoking, but we want to touch on every subject. Here we're starting to find out who our stakeholders are, what their level of interest on the project, what their level of authority is on the project, at what points in the project they might have more interest than others. Things like this that we want to know about our stakeholders, all right? Here we're also going to want to know, and because I'm going to show you the other process I'm showing is communications management. Here we're going to know their communication needs, and we're going to start asking them their needs here in the register so that we can put a plan together that caters to those needs. I teach stakeholder management and communications management side by side because really they're made for each other. That the communicate, and maybe more so than one for the other, the communications management is invented for the stakeholders, right? It's a whole knowledge area, and it's really its sole purpose, or certainly its primary purpose, is to cater to the communications of the stakeholders of this project. So here's the time on the risk register where you start to ask communication questions. Maybe they don't know everything that they need, that they want to be informed upon, but you're going to help them with that. You know they're a sponsor, so they should know this, that, and the other thing. So you're going to help them along with, and your other experts are going to help you along putting together a communications plan that caters to your stakeholder needs. Here's where it starts, though, when we talk about stakeholder management. So let's look at the dot 2 in this case, which is really a dot 1 in disguise, right? So the project management plan, and again, that's whatever state it's in, and anytime we're running a process, the stakeholder register, which is really the key input to this process. And of course, we have to worry about our organization and the culture of our organization. And this goes even beyond, let's say if our stakeholders are outside vendors and even outside clients paying us. We really have to take all of that into consideration. Tools and techniques for planning our stakeholder management, expert judgment. We see it time and time again. So it means expert judgment within each of the knowledge areas and interactively between the knowledge areas as well. I like experts that also know what they're telling me and the impact it's going to have in other areas as well. It's going to help me in my total planning area. Endless meetings. We're going to talk about meetings here when we get into execution, because we're going to get into HR management here soon. And we're going to use certain analytical techniques. And what I mean by we're going to analyze our stakeholders. And again, about their attributes are going to help us, just like we analyze risks by identifying their attributes, right? Their probabilities, their impacts, whatever attributes fit what we're looking at. See how project managers think? This is how we get funnels, fences, bite-sized, okay? We're continuing along even with stakeholder managements. We're talking about humans, so the walls around our fences are a little more flexible. Our funnel's a little more, we could have some give. You grab it and you can actually squeeze it a little bit like a melon, so it has a little give to it when you're talking about people, but it's still, we're setting baselines so that we can manage this to an expectation once we get started, okay? The outputs, that stakeholder management plan, telling us how we're going to gather our information and treat our stakeholders and move those relationships from A to B, all right? And of course, we're always going to have the effect of progressive elaboration. So let's talk about some of the stakeholder analysis. And what they really want you to do here is they in PMBOK, they point out some matrixing. We can actually start to rate your stakeholders, almost like we did with rating our risks. High risk, high, not low risk, medium risk. Same thing we talk about cyber, high interest, high power, high, low this, low that, right? In comparison. And we can be looking at our stakeholders from all different ways, all right? But this is one of the tools that you can use, okay? So when you're building your stakeholder register, you can see, you start plugging, you grab one column as an x-axis and another column as a y-axis, things that mean something to each other, okay? So that the logical relationship between the two will tell you something, like power and interest. I want my most powerful stakeholders to have the most interest. I want to keep them the most engaged. If they show me that they're not, then that's what I need to work on. I need to find a way to keep that powerful stakeholder engaged somehow, invite him to meetings all the time, send him reports, talk to him in the hallway so that whatever I got to do so that he doesn't forget about us, okay? That's the thinking here, okay? And that's what you really kind of need to know for the exam is that you're managing these relationships through the process of initiation all the way back through close, all right? And again, some things like this, they may talk about something called a salience model. All it is the overlapping. There's so many other tools. So you may not even see these call this out. All you're really looking for are ways to manage relationships. I do this. This is not on the exam, but you see what I do? I love breakdown structures, and I even use them when the methodology doesn't even call for them. I have what I'm using, what I'm calling as a stakeholder breakdown structure. Now, why do I use breakdown structures? Because for the same reason I use them in every other place in the methodology, because top down makes sure that I don't forget any. Here, I'm not going to forget anyone. And as I roll up requirements and expectations, I'm not going to forget anything. It's, it's, there is no such thing as a stakeholder breakdown structure in PMBOK. I do this, but I want you to see the power of this, and maybe you can use this to help you, because one of the areas that where people miss is identifying stakeholders. Oh, I forgot about this one. I forgot about that one. Now it's later, almost like quality. Trying to bake it into the cake later is a problem, all right? Once you've gone down a road. Use a breakdown structure. You're not going to see this on the exam because it doesn't exist in the methodology. This is in Clark's methodology only, but it's good advice. Okay, it's really good advice. Okay. Know this for the exam, because I think they might talk about this is talking about desired engagement level or something to that effect in the question. Is where you can see the here it starts with maybe where they're completely unaware all the way up through supporting and into leading. So we want to try to move these folks from left to right. All right, I guess through cheerleading and prodding and I don't know, with stun guns, whatever it takes. All right, we want to, for the test, this is what we're trying to do, move them along. Like I said, in the real world, sometimes I just want to leave them right where they're at. Just want to leave them right where they're at. I'm playing a bigger game of chess, all right? And maybe I don't want to push that button until later. There's no strategy like that being really discussed in the exam. I would say this, that in January, they did add a couple of questions to the exam where here in stakeholder management, when you're talking about putting together their requirements, they want you to begin to visualize the final deliverables a little bit earlier in the process than we've done before. So in other words, the standard real methodology takes me all the way to scope management before I'm really looking at scope as a deliverable, right? They want you to start to envision deliverables a little earlier, maybe while you're still talking to your stakeholders as you're chartering, that kind of thing. Again, I think it's a great idea because it infuses that dose of reality. We're already starting to look at and think about that huge spaceship that you want to build. You sure you want to do a spaceship? Want a Ford Fiesta work? Well, okay, I guess. Okay, now let's do a real project. Okay, but anywhere, no things like this here. That the idea is to move, those with the boo-boo faces and move them along and make them smiley faces. Okay, and that's the end of that. In this dot one, which is this dot two disguised as a dot one, or the other way around, strategies for managing those various stakeholders and their reactions to changing conditions. You're not going to hear a whole lot about that. I would tell you though that you would apply different strategies. You would think for different folks, because you need to tailor the message to your audience. And that's why I say communications management really walks hand in hand with stakeholder management, because that's really what I'm doing is I don't want people to freak out, and I don't want people to get the wrong ideas. I don't want them going down the wrong paths. When I ask them questions, I want straight answers. I can go on and on and on and on. But I guess knowing my stakeholders, at least to the point where I know what the best way to communicate with each of them is really a good way to formulate my strategies for managing. And even if it's general, saying that when I talk to my executives, here's the kind of things that they should know and what I'm and the issues I ought to bring up with them while I have them, okay? Because they're going to give me 5 minutes and they're already going to be annoyed after 2. So I'm going to take, so be ready for this. That's part of your strategy. Include your metrics and criteria for rating stakeholders engagements, like you did as a very good project manager and every other knowledge area. That while you're still here in the .1 plan, set up the rules, set up the measurements, that everything that you can think of that you could measure a stakeholder, just like you did with every other knowledge area, so that there's no ambiguity, there's no arguments later, there's no scope creep caused by a loophole, those kinds of things, okay? Here, you're tied tightly to your communications plan. So managing your stakeholders in many ways is your communications plan, because a lot of your stakeholders, you're not going to see them face to face. So you're going to be communicating through other medium, and maybe not as live communications. I'm just sending them a report. They'll see it, okay, when they open up their inbox, kind of thing. But it is part of my communications plan, and it is how I manage that particular stakeholder's relationship. And I will tell you this before I get into communications, that once I tell someone the communications plan, one of the strengths of it is it sets expectations back to the stakeholders. They know that on Friday they're to expect a project progress report, a dashboard update, and they get it. And when you do stuff like that, okay, it keeps everyone calm, it keeps everyone engaged, and so when I need them, okay, they tend to come to your aid more, because they see you more as a professional. You've really been controlling everything. Everything you said was going to happen is happening, okay, kind of thing. All right. Before I get to now we're not going to do the execution process. First, we're going to go right to communications management and get that done. Here we go. That's human resources. We did that one. The Maslow thing. Yep, we'll do communications management. I'm going to show you some financial calculations, and then we'll take a break. It's only 6:37. Boy, we're in good shape. Okay, so let's pick up here. First off, I guess I should stop and ask, are there any questions about stakeholder management? What I just showed you, 13.2.
I'm okay on my end. We'll review the video due to my level of audio, but I'll be okay.
Good.
Yeah, I'm okay too.
Good. I would just say again, like I've said in regular guy language, every one of these knowledge areas, if you start with the thought that funnels, fences, bite-sized. So even in stakeholders, okay, I have a wide funnel because I want to first off identify all my stakeholders. So I really want to find the highest hill and look far and wide, right? And then I want to get them down. It's not that I'm eliminating stakeholders, but I'm really kind of funneling them into the groups they belong in. And this is where I'm getting from there. I'm categorizing, just like I would do with an affinity diagram, just like I would do with a work breakdown structure. Then I start to put fences around them. That means I'm beginning to understand them and their requirements, so that I can manage them and plan them. See what I mean? Time and time again. Here in communications management, I'm telling you this, more than these two really are hand in glove. Your communications management really is based on your stakeholder management. So the risk register is almost the underlay of your communications management plan. Much like your work breakdown structure kind of helps guide the rest of your breakdown structures so you don't forget anything. Here, there's a specific purpose. Communications is your most powerful tool as a project manager. It is if you're going to be anal, and I'm not, okay, but if it would be communications. Who's getting what, when, what's being generated, how, where's it going, how's it being disseminated, et cetera, et cetera. It's important because it's how you can control not just your stakeholders and expectations, their agenda and their anger, but it keeps your project moving along. So not just informing your communications, but when I say communications management, this also is your work authorizations. These are where I'm assigning people So it's the nuts and bolts communication as well. It's the reports back from the field so I can do earned value calculations, and they have to be timed so that I can do those. All of this is controlled here in my communications management. Here I have to go over a couple of things because communication is so important. PMBOK dives into it as a science for a couple of things that you need to know for the exam. So let me go ahead and do this. But again, while I have this screen up, and let's go back into full mode here, okay? Three simple processes. There's only one here, and this is the very last one, by the way, in planning, and we'll be done. Plan communications management. But we're going to plan it, like I said, almost side by side with our stakeholder management. And then we're going to manage that communications to a baseline. What is that baseline? The plan. The communications plan that we develop is really the baseline to manage communications and control it. Just like anything else that we planned early, okay? We're creating a baseline here, even though there is no such thing as a communications baseline anywhere in the methodology. We really are. And I want you to think that way because that's how you control stuff. How do you control something once you start to execute it? You have to measure it to some sort of baseline, right? Something other than your gut, other than, your golf score. I don't know. That's something. Here's where those rules are set up is in the dot ones. So here we are back to a dot one, 10.1, plan communications management. All right, let's take a look at the process. Since it's a dot one, of course, the project management plan, which means all the other subsidiary plans, yada, 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 right? The stakeholder register, and I tell you, it's the basis. Like I said, hand in glove, best analogy I can give you. And of course, we have to worry about all the things about the culture in our organization when we talk about communications management. Because here, it's not just, here we're going to be talking about, PMBOK's going to want to ask questions about here and in human resource management about virtual teams. Here in the 21st century, they want you to be, modern project managers. We're running a lot of remote projects with people all over the world, different time zones, different cultures, different languages. So they want us to be at least aware of how to utilize and leverage some of the tools and techniques so that we can run virtual teams as well. So it gets even bigger than just our own organization. We have to, tools and techniques are our communications requirements analysis, requirements that we gathered as we were talking to our stakeholders. So the funnel to the fences thing, okay? We'll talk about quickly about a couple of simple communications models you need to know for the test and communication methods. Those endless meetings, all right? And again, these endless meetings can all be together if we're smart. Remember I told you when we were way back in time management, all right, when we were tearing open those work packages, that's the time to do the heavy lifting, folks. Do it because once we sew the patient back up again, it might be tough to go back in there. I'm just saying, so when you see these endless meetings and all of these knowledge areas, they kind of should be together, all right? You make topics of meetings to gather information for all your knowledge areas. All right. Your output is a communications management plan, much like I just showed you in the last screen as we were leaving stakeholders. It's another Excel spreadsheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet that's actionable, right? It's actionable. I'm going to be calling out who gets what, when, why, all that kind of thing. And it's a plan. It's almost like a Gantt chart kind of plan that communications are happening when I want them, where I want them, going where I want them, et cetera, okay? I plan that all out here. Of course, the effect of progressive elaboration. So when I say communications, 90% of a project manager's job might even be a conservative estimate here. And you might see a softball question. Communications is what? And you'll say, well, one easy question out of the 200, this one's it. It's at least 90% of a project manager's job, and it's true. Think about what you're really doing as a project manager in one way or another. In one way or another, you are facilitating communications, right? Not much more than that you're doing, all right, is communicating. So think about a good communications a management plan controls communications like pipes do. These pipes go where we put them, where we told them we want them to. The water flows in the direction that we want it to at the pressure that we told it to, right? And we have put in little valves. I know you don't see them in these pictures, but that we can reroute if we want and that kind of thing. We control. Sort of like the horizontal, we control the vertical. Remember, what was that, the old outer limits? Here's where you really want to get true about control here, because you can. Every document you create, so all those bucket documents that come, all the communications that are done out there, not just for your project and team communications, but your project performance, project plan updates, your et cetera, everything. You can control the communications of your project. And this is a good analogy to think about. Because think about it, who do you have to blame later if things are going haywire because you had miscommunication, or if somebody forgot, or you didn't have, it's really you. You're the one that could have put these pipes in the first place, all right? Let's talk about some of the good things to think about as you're putting together those pipes. The real power of a good communications plan is that you're doing a planning, collection, creation, and distribution of of all the project information, right? As we execute a project, we are creating mountains of data, mountains of information. We are. So we should really have a plan, because that has all value to it. It has value to us today. All that information we're creating has value to us today. It has value to us in the future. So a good communication plan is also thinking about how we can leverage that and that value. So it even goes down to how we put together some of our forms. So the collection, the second one, maybe if we put together our forms, they import easier to databases, things like that, that real smart people think about. But you as a project manager should think about that. Even if it's not the layout of the format of a form, but just make sure that the data that you're capturing in each of the fields is real data that you need. Boy, you could come up with data, a million different things about something, about a car. None of it meant any of it to you. There were 10 things you wanted to know you didn't ask, okay? So as you put together your project forms and things like that, you want to keep in consideration some of the processes you're going to do in Kappa later, and some of the things you're going to do in lessons learned later, okay? Enough said. So the storage, retrieval, and management of data. So remember, you're not just running a project, you're also managing data at the same time for present and future value. You're a good communications plan gives you a measure of monitor and control and disposition of communication. So like I said, what is monitor and control? Sort of sounds like you're measuring against a performance baseline. That communications management plan is really, like I said, more than anything, it's almost a schedule of what happens when in the world of communications. Excuse me, I took a sip of, starting to go a little froggy there. So, and the disposition of, because communications has a factor of urgency to it, and escalation and things like that. So you're going to think about things like that in your communications plan. What happens when you go to do escalation of this? So I'm showing you here on the screen some of the strategies of putting together a good communications plan, that if you really think about these things, you're going to thank yourself later. Not just passing an exam, but doing real projects. Getting a whole of your communications plan now with these kinds of things in mind are a great idea, okay? Dimensions of communications, things that you need to know for the exam, some softball questions. There are, of course, internal and external. There are formal and informal, vertical and horizontal communications, official and unofficial communications. This is right out of PMBOK. Written and oral communications. So you just know that there are different dimensions, okay? And verbal and nonverbal communications, right? So when they talk about dimensions of communications, this is the kind of thing that they mean. And I'm sure they're going to be more specific in the question about what they're asking you, if they even ask you about this at all, because it's really as softball as it gets, all right? Some of the communication skills, though, listening, questioning, and educating. You really should be, at certain points of a project, particularly early, you should be more of a listener and almost guiding a conversationer kind of person than a director. You've got time for that later. And in fact, you need those skills later, the direction skills and the consensus. But hey, follow me up the hill kind of skills. You'll need those later. But early in the planning phase, really you want to listen, because they're the folks that are giving you the good information. Good plans are built on good information. So fact finding and setting expectations is a really good way to approach a communications plan, even once it's done and you're executing it, because it's a living baseline. Remember, it's going to be tied to a whole lot of other things, the other human things like human resources, stakeholder management, and risk management, to name a few. All right. Communication skills like persuading, motivating, and coaching. These are things that we do as project managers. And I mentioned, and I don't know if I've even said it yet in this class, but I'll say it here. Being a project manager is not for everybody. You have to have a certain, I want to say, thick skin. You got to be able to step back. You also got to be able to step forward. In certain situations, you have to know to be able to pick your spots. Because it's up to you to win the battles that win the war. It really is. And so if persuading is one way, if I have to use, like I said, the stun gun, well, I guess that's the other way for the test. All right, negotiating, resolving skills, those kind of things that you're maybe born with, some of them, and some of them you acquire. Planning communications is a couple of things. They might ask you a question, the difference between effective and efficient, right? And these terms, not just for communications, but here they're in communications. Effective communications is the right message in the right format at the right time to the right audience with the right impact. That's what effective is. It means efficient is doing it with only the information you need. So I can apply this term to resources as well. I can have effective resources that are highly skilled and they're efficient because I've used them. I only used 2 guys in a job that other people needed 3 people for. I was very efficient. So effective and efficient, know those 2 terms for the exam. They're used here in communications management, but I'm telling you they apply to every place else in business. Effective and efficient have 2 different meanings to them, but they are hand in hand, okay? One of the good things to do in communication is to set ground rules. I want to do that early. No place did I ever see it done so well as I saw it in the Navy. When I first got off the bus, oh boy, in Orlando, Florida, I still had long hair. I have no hair today, but back in the day, I had hair that was down about the middle of my back and in the front, down to about the front of my chest. My hair would follow me in the wind back in the day. That when I got off the bus, off the bus, on the bus, off the bus, I mean, you knew immediately where you were. I use that as an extreme example, but good professionals set ground rules and professional expectations early. Okay, early in the game, because then people don't test fences. They don't really want to. If you're working with other professionals, they appreciate it. They really want to be professionals too. And if they know that professionalism is what's expected, professionalism is how we operate around here. You see it in the forms we use. You see it in the communications. You see it in the meetings. You see it in the planning. You understand what I'm saying here? Okay. We'll talk about it just quickly again when we get to meetings, or good, how to run a good meeting. Who needs to know what? This is kind of important when you put together a communications plan. Who needs to know what and who's authorized to see it, right? So when you put a plan together, who gets to see what and when? You're not going to get into this. Sometimes this gets into the very much an art and a science. For the exam, know this, that this is an important point to know when putting together a plan, is that you're going to send information to who needs to know it and when they need to know it, okay? So a matter of frequency. When do they need to know it? So you might see it put to them when, or in a matter of frequency. They're asking you the same question, right? Where are you going to store the information? Big organizations are going to have particular databases where things are going to go, or you're going to draw information from. Smaller organizations, maybe you're building all of this on the fly. Maybe you're putting together a PMO, one project at a time, okay? And like I said, for the exam, think your questions that you're actually the starting from scratch with everything. Really, it's a really good test-taking view, is that they want you to know generically PMBOK from start to end. So think that way, that you're really creating all these documents from scratch, all right? What format for storage and retrieval? So these are the things you're going to see in the .1 plan. And again, not on the exam. Again, this is the second time I'm showing you I did the same thing. They're so alike, I would do it anyway. And I do it for every one of the knowledge areas. I call it my communication um, breakdown structure, and my communications needs. Who am I communication? Where are my areas of communication? Remember, one of the first big decision you make when you do a breakdown structure is that level 2. So, and it's going to be in whatever context. In this context, I'm looking at my communications needs. Why? So I don't forget any of them. That's why I would do this. It's not on the exam. It's not in the methodology. It's just Clark to you. Some good practice, okay? Let's talk about some of the I did stakeholder analysis. Oh, communications channels. Remember, I showed you this quickly. You need to know this formula, okay? You know what? I think I'm going to show this to you, but I'll show it to you here. In this example, okay, I'm going to show you 20 stakeholders. You need to know this formula that the number of stakeholders, and this is the possible number of channels, of stakeholder channels, meaning that I have 20 stakeholders and every stakeholder can talk to every other stakeholder. Okay, so how big could this be? Using this formula, I have a number of stakeholders, number of channels of 190 possible channels. 20 stakeholders is a small project. And you can see it's already could be a monster. This is why you need to control communications. So I'm telling you, funnels, fences, bite size. I'm looking at my stakeholder needs. First off, if I look at 190 channels, I did this for 2 reasons. One, so I know how big it can get. But 2, I know it can't get any bigger now than 190. So I'm looking at each stakeholder, and I can now actually start whittling down. This tells me I can actually look at all the stakeholders and say, no, that one doesn't need to talk to that one. That one doesn't need to talk to that one. And now I've whittled 190 down to the 86 that I really need. But it's a good formula because, again, I didn't miss all 190. I didn't miss them. I can eliminate easy ones that are obvious. I don't want the CEO to talk to the programmer. I'll get rid of that one, right? What I'm saying is that's the power of this formula is that I now know all that could possibly be. And I can, as I start to eliminate, I get down to the ones that have to be. Really, it helps me along with that breakdown structure I showed you. I don't miss anything. Once I put together a communications plan, it's harder to weave in new stuff later, okay? I want to consider my internal and external needs. I might have external vendors, okay? And again, I'm putting together a communications plan that looks similar to this. All right, let's get into some of the communications technology. Why you would use technology. Let me see where we're at here for time. It's almost 7. So maybe we will do the calculations after. We'll finish this and then calculations after the break. The reasons you would use the technology, okay? Like I said, back in the day when I didn't have any of this. So there was no question to ask me. I mean, technology back to me was a phone, all right? An actual phone I could pick up so I didn't have to actually, I guess write a letter to California. But other than that, it was snail mail. It was Post-it notes. There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, spreadsheets came out, Lotus Notes. It was green screen. A lot of stuff. Today, leverage technology. It really moves things along. And you do it for certain reasons. You do it for control. Technology makes sure that you have a control. There's still humans at either end of communication, but the flow is under control. Okay. Speed is another reason why you would use it, right? The cyberspace is immediate, all right? Where snail mail, who knows? Accountability. Like an email has a time and date stamp, and so do most data entries, okay? Some sort of accountability of when it was sent and when it was received kind of thing so that you can traceability later. Didn't see this a whole lot back in the day. You did in construction under submittals. We actually signed. It was like, here, sign here. It was couriers. We'd send couriers between each of the trailers to deliver our messages, and you had to sign for them. That's how bad things were from it. Anyway, it's also collaboration. Back in the day, we had paper, right? So I had a paper contract or a paper file, and I could only collaborate with as many people that could stand around me and look over my shoulder, right, at any given time. And forget anybody that was in California. I was kind of maybe describing it over the phone to them. Today, that's not the case. Today, we're all looking at the same document on the same screen, all talking about it just like we are here in this go-to meeting right now. And changes can be made and all collaborate. So we're using for so many good things. It's multidimensional, right? So there's all kinds of ways that we can communicate that technology helps us with visually, audio, that kind of thing. Records, archiving, all kinds of really the power of technology, all right? And again, archival is great because that's where we're going to go back and we're going to do those analytics. We're going to go back later in the back office and slice and dice. So we're thinking about that in our current project for later because we all help each other out and we're all in big continuous improvement modes, right? We're also talking about some of the technology that's available to us. And I'm not going to go through all of this because you guys use a lot of this every day. But the point that PMBOK wants you to know for the exam, or at least be thinking for when they ask you these situational questions, is they want you to consider how you handle virtual teams using technology to do so, to keep not just project documentation, but meetings and things like that moving along, all right? So you have to have certain factors when you choose technology, particularly for virtual teams. You're probably going to see a couple of questions on the exam about it. Urgency for need to know is one of the choices, but availability, okay? The availability of email may be all over the world, but it's maybe video conferences not. Maybe some of the places where our projects are, there's no high speed or so. I don't know. The availability of certain business applications and ways to get onto the net and ways to use the net may not be available. Mobile apps and things. That's what I mean, okay? Ease of use. Remember, I have different audiences around, so I wanted to be able to, I want everyone to collaborate on SharePoint or MS Project Server or whatever. So really, I'm looking for something to easy use. I don't want to have to train everybody every 5 minutes on every time I just don't, okay? Really, it kind of gums up the works. I got to think about my project environment. Where are my folks at, okay? So I have to figure that into my communications plan, that I may have offshores in India that I'm talking to about some of my development. I may have teams in California, so my meetings for them have to be shifted back 3 hours, et cetera, okay? And their input has to be prepared, ready for tomorrow morning's 8 a.m. Eastern people when they come in. You have to think about all of those kinds of things. When I talk about leveraging the technology, I say the problem that is, and something to think about is that it's great, okay, but you lose the human touch. Much like I touched upon when vendor procurement management, that yes, I can outsource, okay, and I can do a lot more because now I have like 2 workforces, but I really am losing control. I'm kind of giving up some of the control that I had, and I'm doing the same thing here with the human touch in communications, the same kind of effect. I'm not right there, so it's tough to read body language over. Like right now, I'm not seeing your faces. This could be a video conference, and maybe you guys, I'd be looking at you guys just kind of looking at me. You know, I can't tell anything. Maybe I could, but I have to be able to use and really leverage it for the audience. So no, understand that sensitivity and confidentiality. You'll get a question on this or so for the exam, because obviously certain project documentations are for eyes only, right? Some of the things that are attached to your emails, and this may come from organizational governance well above your project, coming from J&J saying, no, this is what we do, and this is how we handle certain information. Maybe it's stuff that you can't even see. You're not even allowed to see. It's possible. You got to consider sensitivity, these kinds of things when you're putting a plan together. You're going to get asked about them on the test. Your communications model, and the most simple is this one, okay? That if they even ask you on the test, this is that going from encode back to feedback and response. Encode means a sender sends a message from thoughts and ideas. It's there's a little diagram of this in PMBOK, so look at it, okay? You transmit the message over a medium, all right? So whatever that is, the string between the 2 tin cans is the medium, all right? So I'm transmitting that message. That message could gather noise across that line. You need to know about noise. Doesn't necessarily mean interference like static on AM radio. It could be misinterpretation. That's what they mean by message getting noise on it. You follow what I'm saying? So noise factors that affect the effectiveness of the message. That's why you have to think about who you're tailoring your message to. The good actor tailors their message to their audience, just like, again, that's what you do as a project manager in a lot of cases, right? You want to make sure that it's an effective message. So tell it 3 different ways if you have to. When it reaches the person at the other end, they need to decode that message. They acknowledge back that they got it, and they feedback now. They're, in effect, the sender, okay? Know this simple model if they even ask you about it. Communications method, there are the broad classifications of interactive, push and pull. Interactive meaning both ways, your talk, I talk, you talk, I talk, or something to that effect. Interactively communications. Push is where I'm sending down, and the best example is where I write a directive, a memorandum from down on high. From now on, this is the way you guys will behave. Rah, rah, rah. I don't know. I'm not waiting for your response. I'm not waiting for permission. That's an order. I send it down from on high. It's push. A pull is where I'm taking information back in. And a lot of this could be done through databases, all right, where I'm querying databases. I'm pulling information. Um, Same thing from the field, okay, where I'm getting my field reports. I'm pulling information. They're pushing, I'm pulling, okay? Endless meetings. Think about what meetings should have, all right? I think that they're the biggest single waste of human resources on the planet. But we're going to quickly get through this and take a break in the next 5 minutes. Meetings should have a purpose. These are things that we've all seen before, so I'm going to blitz through this. So only schedule face-to-face meetings when you really can't handle things other ways. Except for every now and then I force a face-to-face because I want to see your face. Just for like no other reason. I mean, we'll make it a good meeting, but I do want to see your face once in a while. But really have a purpose, okay? Have an agenda. This is something that a lot of people do not do. This is good business acumen, okay? Have an agenda. Send it out before the meeting. What does that do? It sets the expectations. It's that saying, we're professionals around here. And by the way, I want you to come prepared. So when I send an agenda out to the project team and the 5 things I want to talk about, they, uh-oh, Clark wants to talk about the O'Neill account. I better have some answers because I know he's going to ask me. That's exactly what I want you to think. I don't even know that. I'm already thinking that in my mind. I sent the email out and I know as soon as you open it, oh boy, and I'm smiling back in my office, okay? Have an agenda. Have an agenda. People come prepared to your meetings. Your meetings are much more effective. That's the way they should be anyway, okay? Take minutes. Not me, I'm not a scribe, but somebody should take minutes, all right, of the meeting and then and generate a recap out to the team. This is what we talked about. Is there any misunderstanding here? Please give it to us in writing, particularly if you're in a client meeting, all right, and you guys decided stuff. You got to really send them a recap meeting, because if you don't recap what you just agreed to somehow, some way, all right. Anyway, take minutes. It also gives you a place to pick up where you left off last time, all right, from the last meeting, because you are going to pick up, if you're a good, effective project manager, you've been asking questions, you've been following things. Remember things like your risk register that you're constantly looking at. So every meeting, I want to know what's new. What's new, bub, in the world of risks, okay? And I'm asking you, so you come prepared, Everybody's required to be prepared and on time. So you require it. Now, I'm telling you, people get stuck in traffic and things happen, okay? So we're flexible professionals. Joe, we were a few minutes late. That didn't bother me in the least, okay? Because it's not what your standard hour. What I mean is the person that comes sashaying into my meeting is going to hear it. All right?
It bothered me.
It's just not good. It's just unprofessional behavior, okay? So you kind of nip it in the bud earlier, right? That and once you set things early, you don't have to keep resetting. I'm telling you, I expect punctuality. Sometimes you're late for meetings, and even you're late yourself. It's not your standard operating procedure, and you do everything you can if you know you're going to be late to give advance notice. All those, you understand what I mean, all right? Keep a meeting short. Keep it to about an hour or so. I love Scrum because they keep their meetings to 15 minutes. They don't even let you sit down for their meetings. In Scrum, they're stand-up meetings. Okay, it's part of the methodology. You stand. You only three questions. We'll talk. I believe I went over the Agile with Scrum before, but they're just going to kind of touch on it on the exam. But I'm just telling you that they keep their meetings very short. Okay, they're 15-minute stand-up meetings, and I'm saying that any meeting in business really shouldn't go much more than an hour or so because people start getting mush brained, all right? Plus, you got some high-priced talent locked in a room for an hour that nobody can talk to. So if I had someone, I got to talk to John. Well, he's in a meeting. Oh, damn it. When's he getting that? That's see what I mean? Meetings suck, okay? And they really do. So you make them effective, get them done, get the hell out of there. Go back to what they're doing something else, all right? Come up with action items. At the end of each meeting, there should be action items. So something I assign to each one of your, especially if you're growing your folks. We'll talk about that after the break. This is one of the great ways to grow your folks. Give them stuff to do. Give them stuff to do, okay? And so that they got to come back to you next time with real answers. You're growing them. Really, you're getting your money's worth from them too. They want to be project managers like you someday, so give them project management stuff to do, all right? Action items. Action items, all right? And again, a recap of the meeting when you're done. Okay, we're going to stop here, all right? Exactly where I wanted to. And we'll get into the financial calculations. My smartphone says 7:10. We'll let it click over to a 7:11, and we will recording now, okay? And pick up from the current slide. All right, let me minimize. Okay, let's start with some softball stuff. You got to know these classes of estimates, right? They're probably going to ask you on the exam a softball question or two, but they're going to ask them to you, okay? I remember we talked about order of magnitude. That's probably the one that you're most likely to see. Know them all, though. I mean, there is memorization areas where memorization is the best strategy, and this is one of them. Okay, memorize your classes of estimates. That an order of magnitude. Remember, I told you that's your first big picture look. All right, we're just walking. Just me and the contractor are walking through the field, envisioning a mall here. Okay, I guess. And -25 to +75, all right, is the official order of magnitude. It's almost an old man term. I almost never see it again anymore. You have a preliminary estimate, and I'm glad that I hit this screen here because I mentioned this before. I mentioned it again and again. Until you truly baseline your project, use the word preliminary as much as you can. In fact, every preliminary schedule, preliminary budget, preliminary estimates, preliminary everything. I've worked for too many hammerheads that you told them something and they just walked out, didn't hear anything else. They heard what they wanted to hear and they walked out the door. Until you're really ready to baseline your project, you are not ready to say a day and a budget. I mean, you're getting close, all right? You don't live in planning. You don't say, oh, I'll tell you when I'm ready. You keep your boss informed and such so that they understand you're getting close and why you're not ready to go baseline quite yet. Keep them engaged. It kind of helps you along. Preliminary estimates, like I said, when you talk about doing estimates and you're doing progressive elaborations, and the question is, Clark, at what point do I stop progressively elaborating? At what point is this plan good enough to take into execution now? Okay. And I'm saying one of the indicators of that is your estimates of time and cost and such that are coming down closer because they're narrowing. Okay. And to the point where you feel comfortable. And I see that definite estimate there, for example, -5 to +10 is a really good place to be because you think about you're also going to do contingencies right on top of things. So you get the definite estimate. That's pretty good. I'd say in that range, maybe the one above it. It depends on how antsy your bosses are. You start to get your estimates down close. All right. I think +25 is a little high, but you start to narrow down, and really that's a good indicator that you're getting close, that you can and you're running out of major issues or major questions to answer in each one of your knowledge areas. You follow what I'm saying? But I guess a good general way is to start looking at your estimates and watch the tolerance. It's almost watching weight loss. I lost 50 pounds. I mean, you just keep getting thinner and thinner until you're ready to go. Okay. Know these estimates. All right. We talk about project selection. Okay. I guess I'm going to blitz through these again real quick because it is an important part of you will see these on the exam. So I'm going to touch on net present value for 5 minutes real quick again. I sent you guys this formula sheet. There are all kinds of other ones out there. So let me stop and say that this is a good time, and I've mentioned this to Aubrey, and I'm going to mention it to you, Jill, and everybody, and the other guys that are listening in. This is a good time. You want to start to go out and start looking at stuff on the internet now. That's what I'm doing too. That's how I keep my costs down. There's a lot of stuff in the public domain out there, okay, for mock exam questions and flashcards and all kinds of ways to get yourself prepared and to sit for the exam. My class here, I wanted to make sure that you understand how to do everything, that you understood the application of things, And that's about the best that I can do is make sure that you have an understanding so that you can bone up on it and sit down. You two, I know for sure, are going to do really well. But let's go back to this. You definitely will see this on. Yes.
There's YouTube also Khan Academy. It's free, and it actually breaks it down. And it does some other like a whiteboard and tells you how to break things down. Also, just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah, they're pretty famous. The Khan Academy. They're famous. I know you're studying Rita McKay, and there's all kinds of Quizlet's a great one for flashcards. So some things that like when I talk about memorization. So those are great places. Flashcards are a great way to help you in memorization techniques. Some of the things that you have to memorize. And so the great majority of the test, I'm going to say situational application. The questions are going to be leading. They want you to answer the question as if you're fixing a problem or moving something along or moving to the next process. Or that's what they want you to. That's all. Many of the questions that you're going to see on the exam. The formulas are right here. Okay, that you're absolutely going to see some of the project selection stuff and earned value. I'm not going to go back and earn value now. We're going to do that in the follow-up. But let's just take a quick look. The planned value and future value. We need to know this as project managers because we run projects that go long-term, right? So we need to know it from a project selection standpoint, but even present value and future value is such a general term. Any investor out there wants to know what the future value of their present value investment is going to be, okay? So this is pretty standard. The R is the discount rate. That's the rate that I have to see for a profit. So in other words, it's the reason why I tied my present money up now for 3 years is because I'm expecting a return of X at the end of it. I didn't do it because I'm a nice guy. I didn't do it because some people are altruistic, but most investors are going to tie their money up long term because they're going to get a return on it. That R is the important part of the equation. Okay, you figure out to get the net present value. Okay, and we'll blitz through that quickly. You take the biggest number. Return on investment, take the biggest number. I say this because you're going to see these are kind of softball questions. You might not even have to do a figure. You might have to just answer pick the bigger value is the answer to the question. So I'm saying sometimes the question is going to be so easier. Like, was it that easy? Yes, it was. That one was. Okay. Payback period. I'm going to show you a couple. Let me just show you a couple of these screens. All right. Let's start with the most simple. This is payback period. Simple payback period that does not take into account the time value of money. All right. All we're trying to do is day one, I laid out $100,000 in an investment, and I expect inflows to come in. At what point do I, in raw dollars, do I get my $100,000 back? Okay. So if you even get asked this question, you might. Year one, I expect an inflow of 35,000. Year two, I expect an additional 45,000. So now I'm up to $80,000 at the end of 2 years. In year three, I expect by the end of the year, I'm going to have 40,000. Now, if the cash flows are even through the year, that means right in the middle of year three, I made that last 20,000 I needed to make. And so my payback is year 2.5. Right in the middle of year three, I made my $100,000 raw money back. Okay. This is about as simple as it gets. I'm not even going to ask if you have any questions because this is pretty simple. Okay. Internal rate of return is where we're looking for the best rate of return on an investment. So when we talk about that here, I'm not going to go through all the math here. We're going to pick Project A, and the reason that we are is if you do quickly, you look. Project A is giving us a monthly return of $5,000. That's $60,000 a year. We're going to get our $100,000 back and start to run in the black somewhere in the before even the halfway of the second year. None of the other scenarios will do that. Okay, this A is the best of the without doing the math. All right, guys can do it. Guys see the video if you really want to do the math to figure this out. But that's why you selected Project A. Okay. Then we talked about the time value of money, where we said that money in my hand now is worth more than money in the future, right? And that's for a lot of reasons. One is because of, just the cost of living and inflation on money that I mentioned, the $10 bill in 1930 and what it bought you a night out at the Ritz and, you know, steak dinners and everything, and a $10 night out, $10 tonight today it was lucky you buys one appetizer. So still 10 US dollars. All right. It's the time value of money. That's one thing. The other is its investment power. It's the other value that I'm giving up the money now and I'm tying it up in some future investment. So it's more valuable in my hand because I can still select what I want to do with it. I still have people knocking down my door that, hey, invest with me, invest with me. I have my choice. I still have my leverage, right? So that's the other thing. Okay, so I showed you the two formulas, right? And like I said, if I was to just to put $500 in a mattress, all right, and leave it there for 10 years, I'm only going to pull $500 out, and it's not even going to have $500 worth of buying power in 10 years from now. It'll be worth $350 in real world power. So all I did, without getting that return, without asking for a discount rate, all I did was lose money. All I did was lose money. Money is an asset. Money's a tool. And if you use it right, okay, it works for you. It works for itself. So we're going to talk about, let's take a quick look at what I did here. Is I did the future value of this investment based on a 5% return over 3 years. And if you do the math, plugging in the numbers, future value is 1740. That number in and of itself doesn't mean much, but it does mean that it is a positive investment. So if nothing else, I know just from looking at it that I went from 1500 to 1740. And so I made money. I don't know whether that's good compared to other vehicles I could have put that 1500 in, right? So I'm not using this as a comparative tool. That's what net present value is going to do for us. Here, all I'm doing is looking at and seeing if I'm getting a positive or negative number, almost like we did with schedule and cost variance. Here is the more important of the two, and it's the reverse. But we want to know what's the present value of future value cash flows. Okay, discounted back to in present value terms. We want to do this because I want to weigh this investment against other investments. All right, so as I look at the future value, again this equation takes me right back to the 1500. But I want you to see that this part of the equation is what takes us into net present value. Remember I showed you that net present value for the exam is a project selection tool where we use net present value to select one project over the other, to do one project over the other, okay? So you're going to see a simple example like this. In the real world, you're going to be selecting from maybe a whole basket of projects that maybe we do, maybe we don't do, okay? And net present value is only one way to rate the merit of a project. It's a financial calculation more than anything. It really doesn't take into the qualitative values or anything else that project A or project B might bring in. So, but for the test, know these calculations, okay? And I did these scenarios where I gave you the particulars. And again, for the exam, you're picking these out of the question. Okay, you pick all this stuff out of the question. It's going to give you enough information. There's your formula. And as you can see, this is the present value formula for each year. It's exactly the formula I showed you. And it's net present value. Remember, we see net all the time in our paychecks, right? You know, after they take out all the deductions. Well, in this case, we need to minus the initial investment from our calculations, and it gives us our net present value, okay? Well, I'm not going to go through the calculations because I guess you guys get it, but you can see what happened here is we chose project A for the higher net present value. But for the test, a positive net present value is a good thing. So it's a good thing, but the higher of the two is the one you select. And the opportunity cost is project B in this scenario, or the value of project B. The expected value of project B is the opportunity cost. Lost because we decided to do project A, okay? The earned value monetary thing, I'm not going to do this one. This is a decision tree. You're just doing your math all the way back. I hope that's okay with you guys because I want to keep moving. And we did the communications channels, showed you this one. Let's get into the depreciations, all right, so we can get into the execution process. 3 different types of depreciation I'm going to show you. And they may ask you on the exam. They may ask you only about one or so. I don't know. We'll see, okay? But I'm going to show you all 3, and they're pretty straightforward, all right? It's called straight line depreciation, double declining balance method, and sum of years method, all right? When we talk about depreciation, first you understand what it means and why we're doing it, okay? Depreciation is what happens to, when they mean depreciation, they mean the value of something goes down as you use it. The more you use something, the less valuable it is. It's not brand spanking new anymore, right? So the best example, everyday example is the driving the new car off the lot, right? So, I mean, from the moment it hits the street, it begins to lose value. That 3 months from now, and the reason for that is that even 3 months from now, even though that's still my new car in my mind, I couldn't sell that for the same new car price because it's already got 5,000 miles on it. Plus, the guy can go down to the dealer and get a new one that has no miles on it. There is a devaluation, okay, a depreciation, and we depreciate for tax purposes. Okay, so it's particularly done in capital when we buy like capital equipment. So we make a major purchase of a piece of equipment that we're going to use for X amount of years. Then we're going to retire it. We're either going to just sell it for scrap and then replace it. It's probably what we're going to do. But while we're using the equipment, we want to depreciate its value over the life of its time for tax purposes, all right? Because in year 2, even though that machine's still running at 100%, it's really on paper, it's not worth what it was in year 1 because it's not brand new anymore. There are 3 different ways to depreciate, okay? And I'm going to show them one at a time. We'll start with the straight line depreciation. It's pretty much what it sounds like, okay? Where you're going to depreciate the same amount every year until it's all gone. What we're trying to do here is, let's take this example, and I got this off the internet. I think it's Investopedia or something, right? Pensive Corporation purchased the Procrastinator Deluxe machine for $60,000, all right? It has an estimated salvage value of $10,000 and a useful life of 5 years. Pensive calculates the annual straight line depreciation for the machine as, now first off, before I get into then my next click, this is kind of common of the way that they'll word the question on the test, okay? They're giving you the information of, they're telling you what the initial investment was. So take it at the initial investment, $60,000. They're telling you that the salvage use, that means after I'm done with this, and I'm ready to get rid of it, I can sell it for 10 grand. Okay? That I'm going to get at least my 10 grand back of my initial investment at the end after I'm done using this after 5 years. Because so if I take the salvage cost off the top, and that's what I do in straight line depreciation, I take the salvage cost off the top and I'm left with what's called depreciation asset cost. That's $50,000, okay? I need to depreciate that cost over the life of the capital equipment. That was 5 years, the useful life. So I took that out of the question, 5 years. If I'm doing a straight line depreciation, then the formula is very simple. It's 1 over the years of useful life. So 1 over 5, right? Well, here it is again. I just broke this out in a line. Okay, that 1 out of 5, there it is, 20% depreciation rate. So the first thing you do in a depreciation question is you calculate depreciation rate. Then you're going to calculate depreciation expense. And it's going to all work out, okay? You get those 2 right in these questions and you're going to be just fine. So let me show you how that works. In straight line depreciation, that means we're going to depreciate the same amount every single year till it's gone. So in this simple example, we had $50,000 to depreciate. Remember, that's the $60,000 minus the salvage cost. We're going to depreciate a brand new piece of equipment, $50,000 over the 5 years. That's at a 20% depreciation rate. That's going to be at $10,000 in annual depreciation. Let's take a quick look at the table that I'm going to build for you. First off, the standard table that you'll see has what's called a net book value. It has a start. So the year start. It has to take off the depreciation expense and then the balance at the end of the year. That end year balance becomes the beginning of the next year balance. So this is how things work. This is how you do things in accounting. You guys have seen this before. So in our example, I'm sorry, not net BOK value. It's net book value. I'm sorry, I left that an O. Net book value, or NBV, all right? Here, we figured our depreciation rate is 20%, right? We have 5 years and $50,000 So 1 over 5 is 20%. That's how we came up with that rate. The depreciation expense is $10,000 a year. So if we look at year one, we start the starting balance, the starting book value is $50,000, right? That's the investment minus the salvage. We depreciated it by $10,000. The end balance at the end of year one is $40,000, which becomes the beginning balance of year two. Depreciated another $10,000. It's a straight line. We're down to 30, and so on until we get down to the final year. At year 5, the depreciation expense takes us to 0. Every one of these formulas takes you to 0. That's what you're doing. You're depreciating a piece of equipment to 0. So that's now you know you did it right. It's almost like buttoning a shirt and you missed a button. When you get to the top, you're like, oh, wow, something's not right here. This is how you tell you didn't get your table right. It has to come down to 0. Okay, your calculations bring it down to where you depreciate everything except the salvage costs. And if there is no salvage cost, then you depreciate everything. Okay, if there's no salvage cost, then you're going to be depreciating the entire investment. Before I move, and don't forget that your 10,000 in salvage didn't count in this. We took it off the top. All right. In the next, in double depreciation, we're going to take it off the back end. Here we're taking it off the top, and it accounts for the life of the asset. Okay, that's what we're doing here when we do depreciation. So we depreciate, like I just said, you depreciate that DAC, that depreciation assets cost, down to 0. That's how you know you got your table correct. Before I leave straight line depreciation, did you guys see this? Because understand what I just did here?
Yes, I think I'm good. Yep.
I'm good.
I said the key here is first to calculate the depreciation rate, then the expense. Okay? And don't be fooled because read the question. I know they both have the word depreciation in them. So don't be confused. A rate is a percentage. You really can't mix up a rate and a cost, right? Or an expense. An expense is a hard number. So here it is. And in straight line, it's exactly what it sounds like. Okay, so let's move on to double depreciation. And here's an example of what double declining balance depreciation, right? The key here is the same as it was in straight line, is that the first thing that you're going to do is calculate the depreciation rate, the rate of depreciation. That's the first thing that you're going to do. And here, in double declining, as you can see, we're not going to take the 10 grand off the top. Read the question. ABC purchased a machine for $100,000. It has an estimated salvage value of $10,000 and a useful life of 5 years. So I'm taking this information out of the question so I can do the problem, right? The double declining depreciation calculation based on this is this, right? The entire investment goes to the top over the useful life. Same formula, that the depreciation rate is 1 over the useful life. So 1 over 5. If they said it's 3 years, then the depreciation rate is figured 1 over 3. It's 1 over the useful life years, okay? In this case, and it's probably either going to be 3 or 5. They don't want you working on big tables and stuff on the test. Just want you they know what you're doing. So again, if it's 1 over 5, we figured the straight rate at 20%, right? Just like we did in the last one. Except we're going to do double declining, okay? Which means we're going to take 40% each year and double decline our way down, okay? We do this for a couple of reasons. One, on a big capital purchase, we get to depreciate a good chunk of it right the first year or so. So we start, instead of it going down, we get to get it. So they get a chunk of, they like that. Accountants like that in some spaces. But let's see how that works. So like I said, I came to the depreciation rate of 20%. That was done the same as I did before, 1 over the number of years. I double that because I'm doing double decline. So now I'm going to apply a 40% rate to these numbers. If I apply a 40% rate to the initial 100,000, that's $40,000. And the first year, the value of that equipment is $60,000. Becomes the beginning balance of year 2. 40% of $60,000 is $24,000. So in this case, the rate is 20% and the expense is $24,000, right? One's a rate and one's an expense. But that's 40%. That's where that 24,000 is. It's 40% of 60,000. Takes us down to 36, which becomes the beginning balance, et cetera, et cetera. You'll note we didn't take the 10,000 till the end. So year 5 had 12,960 bucks left on it. At that point, we take off the 10 grand in salvage, and the equipment is valued in that year 5 at $2,960. And you see what we did? We accounted for the whole 90,000 and then the 10,000 at salvage. So we proved the formula. See what I'm saying? This is how you do double declining. Come up with straight rate first and then apply it all your way down. When you get to the last year, take your salvage cost out and the rest goes just for the costs. Did this make sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense. I'm trying to process everything.
Let me
But I guess
let me explain it
maybe
again.
going back, I guess how do we know, and I'm trying to, like, 'cause I have everything on the screen, I'm trying to take notes, but how do we know how many years of depreciation we're going to, like, how many years to do it over?
Well, because we're going to take it right out of the question here. Useful life of 5 years. Okay.
How would we know in, like, a normal situation how many years it would be good
Oh,
for?
the accountants are going to tell us that.
Oh,
The
okay, gotcha.
accountants are going to tell us that. They're going to tell us what they want to say. We might make that decision, but I'm probably not. Okay. We're doing this. We're buying capital equipment for our project, and they're worried about the bean counters, worried about this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
But just to let me rerun through this again, this double declining before I move to sum of years, just so that there's still no confusion. Remember in the straight line, we took the salvage cost right off the top. So we started with 60,000 and we took the 10,000 from right off the top day one. We depreciated the other 50,000. Here in double declining, we didn't do that. We left the whole 100,000 intact. We're going to take the salvage at the end. I want you to see the difference there, okay? Because it is a difference. Sum of years, by the way, takes it in the beginning. So this one's the different one of the three. All right, so I want you to see that. That's the first thing I wanted you to see. And second, that going back to straight line, we figured out the depreciation rate first. We're doing exactly that here. We figured the depreciation rate first, and it jumped out of the question at us because it told us useful life of 5 years. So the depreciation rate is 1/5. That's 20%. Since we're doing double declining, 20 doubled is 40. And then we just start to apply that 40% all the way down. Take the salvage at the end. Okay? You just practice.
Yep.
But was there anything about what I just said confused you? Clark, I didn't see that. Anything?
I like it as you explained it the second time. I could actually understand it a little bit better.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. It's part of our review, so you'll see it at least a third time. But like I said, I want to make sure that it's solid now. I don't want to do something and have you all vague and confused. So let's move on to the third method. It's called sum of years, okay? And this also has to do with useful life is really the key, okay? Useful life's the key in depreciation, and it makes sense, right? That's what we're doing. We're trying to devalue a piece of capital equipment from brand new down to nothing. That's what we're trying to do over a set number of years. Here we're going to use what's called the sum of years method. So let's read the question and apply this method, all right? The ABC company purchases a machine for $100,000. It has an estimated salvage value of 10,000. So it's the same example we just saw. And a useful life of 5 years, all right? The sum of values, digits, depreciation calculation is this, okay? This is the key. See this part of the formula right here is right here. We start with useful life because we have the first thing we want to do is come up with as a depreciation rate, okay? The way we're going to do it here in sum of years is we're going to start with that useful life, okay? 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 15. 15 is going to be the common denominator that we're going to use in our table, okay? If they said the useful life was 3 years, then it would be 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. And 6 would be the denominator that we're going to use in our figures. Before I move even an iota, even an inch further, did you guys see why I'm using 15? I pulled 5 years out of it, and I added them together to come up with the common denominator of 15.
Yep.
Clear? Good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Since it's a 5 years, then the numerators go backwards, 5 down to 1 over that 15. See how simple this is? And in doing so, I created fractions, all right, which is the rate. So 5 over 15 is 1/3, right? 1/3 of them, remember, we took that 10,000 off the top. So what we're trying to do is depreciate $90,000. So 1/3 of 90,000 is $30,000. We take that $30,000 off and the next year, we got 4 over 15. So we depreciated a rate of 26.67. We take that rate, that takes us to 24,000 and so on until we get down to the year 5. And we've depreciated the entire $90,000. The 90,000 is depreciated plus the 10 grand that we took for salaries off the top. See, the formula proves itself. That's how you do sum of years. So you zero right in sum of years. Should tell you, zero right in on useful life. That's the first thing you got to do is useful life. Add up those years, okay, and that's your denominator. Then take the number of years and go backwards for your numerators. They create the decimals that you use for the actual depreciation rate and work your way down the table until you get to 0. Well, until you've accounted for all of the depreciation you needed to within the time frame, and you did here. Okay. Again, I'll go over this again. These are 3 simple ones. Look over the video again. Watch my video again. Some a little bit later, but as you can see, well, it is pretty simple, Clark, when you look at it. Just knowing the keys to them, that's all. And it's only the first time I ever saw it too. So it does make sense, sort of, to me, Clark. Do a bunch of these, okay? We'll do a bunch of these.
Can I ask you, what is statistics? What do you think we would get something like this on the test?
What do you mean? How many questions you might see for some?
No, but some years, do you think it's on every test, or do you think it's on some test?
Wow. They generate from a question bank. So I would, for your sake, I'd study it like it was going to be on my test. That's what I would do. You know what I mean?
I understand. I just haven't. I've seen this because of you, but I haven't seen it in any other lectures other than yours. That's why I was asking.
Well, it's one of the depreciation methods that they want you to know. It may be in there. And remember, I told you, there's going to be questions on that test that we never talked about. They expect you to walk in with other knowledge, and not just business knowledge, but other project management knowledge that wasn't directly called out in PMBOK. Sorry to say, there's not a whole lot of those, but they do color outside the lines a little bit. I would, like I said, just kind of be prepared for everything. And you're the kind of guy that seems to be doing that anyway, Aubrey, so just don't overload yourself. Remember, a sponge can only soak up so much before it's just dripping all over the floor, man, right? And that's not doing anybody any good, so don't kill yourself. Anyway, let me move on to the toughest of the, let me get a time check here, because we want to get an execution process, and we will. Okay, we're going to, because we'll have about a half hour for the execution process. This, if there's a tough equation, as equations go, this is the longest one for you. You might see a question about point of total assumption. Let me tell you what this is. It's a fixed price contract tool that allows for some flexibility. But point of total assumption, where I remember I told you we structure contracts on a prism of risk, right? So in a case of we're trying to control our costs. So I'm looking at this as a cost plus contract where I'm also like a fixed fee or incentive fee, but I'm trying to control my costs and to a great degree here. So what I have is, I told you, I may set up a line where here's where the contract is, and if we have some overruns, I'm willing to share the risk with you, my vendor. So we're going to look at this formula from both sides. We're going to look at from our side as the vendor, and we're going to look at it from, I'm sorry, as our side the customer, and their side is the vendor, okay, of PTA. What PTA means is point of total assumption. It's where we, the client, are no longer going to share in any overruns. It's going to be on on the vendor from that point on. So in effect, from that moment on, it's a fixed price contract, right? Okay, so we're going to from one point between two boundaries, we're going to share risk up to a point. After that, which is called the point of total assumption, you're the guy that's got to finish this out of your own pocket, you Mr. Contractor. Okay, and again, at that point, it effectively becomes a fixed price contract. Okay, let me show you how you do point of total assumption. All right. First off, let's start with the most basic part of this. What we're trying to do here is we're like everything else, we have to cover our costs. Okay. So we're talking about target costs. So like I said, in cost plus contracts, I told you they all had an element of cost. Sorry, we covered our cost and then something else, some way that they made their profit. But one of the elements was the cost, the real cost. We have to pick those up. As a client, we don't mind paying real costs. And as a vendor, I got to at least get my real costs back, right? So that's a major part of the equation. The next place I'm going to take you to is the target price. Okay, let's go down here to the table. Price, okay, is the most simplest pricing model out there. Is if you add costs and some sort of profit, you have a price. That's how we came to the target price here in this example. We say our target costs is $2 million, and we're going to let our contractor make $200,000 or 10% profit, okay? So our target price for this contract is $2.2 million, all right? Before we even negotiated this contract, we set a ceiling price, and that no matter what scenario we were going through, we were never going to go any higher than $2.45 million, right? We set that because we need to set a boundary of between this number, between the target price and the ceiling price, we are willing to share risk to some degree with our vendor up to a point, and then after that, they're on their own. That's what this formula figures out, is the difference. So from the point of the target price and the ceiling price, that gap in between, we are going to share based on a ratio. So let's take this example and put it into play. Okay, here with our share ratio. By the way, I didn't show you. This is 80% buyer. That's us, and 20% seller for overruns. It's pretty good. We're being pretty generous here, and it's probably because we gave them maybe I won't say a scope that wasn't so tight, but we understand that we're probably going to overrun here, and we know we have a little slop in our budget. Okay, so we're willing to do this, so I don't have to stop the job dead. I can do some overruns, but he's got to take some risk too. He has some skin in the game. It's 20% skin in the game over 2.2 million himself, up to a point. Here's the formula in action. Okay, point of total assumption equals the ceiling price that was set at $2.45 million. That was probably set long before back in budgeting. Okay, we're going to minus the target price. That's the combination of the target cost and its profit, right? We're going to minus that from our target. So that's the difference between the ceiling price and the target price divided by our buyer ratio, what the ratio of risk we're willing to take in that gap. We're going to add the costs because that's the back end of this very good formula. And we're going to come up with this, that at $2,312,500, the $501st, okay, is on you, Mr. Contractor. So what I'm saying is that up to this point here, we've overrun the contract by $112,000, okay? We've picked up, as the vendor, we picked up 80% of that, which was about $90,000 we paid in the overruns. We're not going to pay any more overruns now. The vendor has also paid in about $22,000, $22,500 of his own money. And I want to point out back to target price that this is an important line for both of us. So I want you to see that as the almost the equilibrium line here. Target price is important to us, the customer, because we want to get it for the best price, and this is the best price. It's cost plus a 10% profit margin. We're not going to get any cheaper than that. From the vendor's eyes, that's all he's getting is this. He's going to get his cost and his 10%. So he doesn't want overruns. He really doesn't. Even though we're doing some, he appreciates we're picking up the lion's share up to a point. He still has a skin in the game. He's already, at this point, lost $22,500 of his profit, all right? And he's going to lose more if this thing continues to overrun. This is how you figure this formula out. And like any good formula, you need, if it can be swapped around. So if they give you the other variables and tell you to figure out ceiling price or target cost, you ought to be able to do it if they give you all the other variables in the formula. This is what that means, okay? That at that point on, you're the one paying for it, okay? You probably see one question like this, but I wanted you to see it in action, all right? So you know what this means. Any questions?
I'm good on my end.
Makes sense, right? That we're sharing. We'd also share underruns. I want to show you, you're probably not going to see this on the test, but I want, as project managers, I want you to see this. This is the carrot, right? This is saying that if you can do this for under that 2.2, that I'm going to split 50-50 with you. So if you can come in at 1.8, okay, and there's 400,000 bucks on the table, there's another 200 grand in it for you, Mr. Contractor. That's the carrot part of this. Probably not going to, that's really not what where they're going with. And when they ask you the one question, maybe they want you to come to this figure. They want you to know when it's over, pal. Okay. That it's on you, because they want you to understand the whole concept of fixed price contracts and cost plus contracts and controlling costs and being able to plug in a number into a spreadsheet that's not going to move, and why you would do this and why you'd work with vendors in certain situations and yada, yada, okay? This is part of the thinking. It's also, like I said, it's a risk management strategy as well, okay? Jill, if you're okay, I'm moving on, okay? I'm going to spend the last
Yep,
30.
I'm okay.
Good. I'm glad. I'm going to spend the last 25 minutes or so. And we're going to stop at 8:30, hell or high water, I guess. We're into the execution processes now. So first off, let me jump out of PowerPoint and show you. Let's look at Vargas. As you can see, I've shown you all of this. These are all of the planning processes. We've looked at them in depth. This to the point where we're ready now to baseline our project. That's where we're at. And so we're going to take the plan that we created in these processes into this process group now, the execution process group. And notice, like the initiating process group and even the planning process group, that the integration management process is the gatekeeper. You see what I mean? It's almost like a traffic cop for each process group. So you'll see that here when we get in the execution process group. By the way, there's only 8 processes here, right, in the process group, and I already showed you one of them. So in 7 of them, we're done executing process group already. So let me jump back into the PowerPoint, and where am I? Right here. Okay. So I say think like a project manager because now where are we? Well, here's where we're at. We have now baselined our project and we're ready to take it into execution. So our battle plan ready to take into battle, so to speak, is I guess the analogy that I use. I've showed you so far. Here's where we're at. Here's where we've gotten so far in our class, right? And we just finished up the 24 planning processes. So we're going to look at the 8 execution processes and 11 monitor control processes, and those 3 processes I affectionately call the sausage factory, okay? And again, these processes go pretty quickly, these 8 and 11 here, because they're so intertwined. I'm already going to start talking about these processes while I'm talking about these. And you're going to see that they're very tightly knit. So they're almost teaching them all at once. But I have to show them so that you know where they lie in the methodology to pass a test. And of course, there'll be the 2 processes, the closing process. Only 2, but they're quite powerful. Okay, and remember, here's where we're at in the project now. So we've put together our plan, right? And we did this through progressive elaboration through our planning loops, running everything through our project management plan and out to our subsidiary plans, right? When we take our project into execution, we're not going to stop planning. We never really leave planning. We taper off. We taper down our progressive elaboration. And I'm going to show you there's still points of progressive elaboration even in execution. But what we're going to mainly see now are be kappas. These will be changes in ads. The progressive elaborations we'll see in execution would be mainly scope ads, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But here's where we're at, and I want you to think like a project manager, that we're really changing phases, almost like the season's changing from summer to winter now, and people are no longer tank tops, we'll wear jackets now, okay? So I want you to see that we're now taking on a different mindset, a whole different set of skills. We're moving balls along now, okay? I want to show you the buckets one more time. Know the documents that we're building all the way through the methodology that we're sharing, right? Here's how we got where we're at right now. We're at, supposedly, we're baselined. And we're taking this project, and we did this through round and round the progressive elaboration. And it was based on how all the knowledge areas affected scope. Not that we didn't think about anything outside of scope, but scope was boss. We're here, the project existed to create a deliverable, so scope is boss of everything. It's really the base for strategy, the base of thinking, the base of estimates, the base of everything, okay? So we're going to say for this conversation's sake, we're ready to go. So we're going to take this in until we close it out. I want to show you this because this is very important, will help you fundamentally understand what I'm going to show you now in the execution and also in the monitor and control process groups. And I want to zoom this guy in somewhat, okay? This is the information hierarchy. This is how information, we love hierarchies in project management. Like I said, we like to be able to go from one level to the next to the next. We like things that funnel up and down and align and all. We love all this stuff because it's the fences around things. It's the funnels. It's the bite-sized, okay? There's a particular flow, okay, of the evolution of how a report, it starts as data. Data becomes information. Information becomes reports. I stop and I say this because if you think in these terms, as we're executing our project, in other words, I'm assigning work and tasks are being executed. I am generating work performance data. Great examples, earned value. They're telling me the work they're completing. That's data. In and of itself, an earned value number in the middle of space means nothing. It's data. It's just at a data bit level. That data is going to now be subjected to control processes. Those are the formulas. And those formulas are going to take the data and turn that data into information. That information combined together with other information in overall project control becomes reports. Those reports go different places. I'm going to show you. They're for change control. They're also to go back for changes in the project management plan itself and also affect project communications. But I want you to, these three levels are what I'm going to show you is the basis of how the execution process plannings work and the monitor and control process planning group work. That data becomes information, becomes reports. Okay? Enough said. Let's go ahead and I'll show you in real world what we're doing here. What I mean. And again, this is the interaction. Why did I throw this screen in here? I don't know, because it took me forever to build this thing and I wanted to show it to you again. So let's look at our execution process. Here they are right out of Argus. Let's put in the plan into action. As you can see, 3 of those were human resource management. So we're heavy, and that makes sense, that within the executing process group itself, that we have processes that were human resource related. We're assigning tasks, and people are putting their skills to use. I come back to integration management here. And again, I point out that integration management is the one knowledge area that has at least one process all the way across the board, and because that's what it does. It's the traffic cop. It decides the information flow in a formal and measured way up and down through the methodology, okay? Particularly important are going to be 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5. Like I did with procurement management, where I showed you 12.2 in a little early, I'm going to show you those two just conceptually early because I have to. They're part of a big cycle of change management. 4.3, 4.4, 4.5 are the cycle that's the true inherent project management, near and dear to our hearts is change management, right? Scope control. And not because we don't want anything to get it, but we want to account for change because we want to get paid for it. We want to account for it with extra time and money, and whatever, if that's all we get. But this is the formal process, this little loop I'm going to show you. Okay, but as you can see, integration management is there. And by the way, I remember this is the one I didn't write a subsidiary plan for. The other ones have subsidiary plans. Integration management is kind of baked right into the cake. It's part of 4.2's big project management overall plan. And as you can see, it forces a tie, a traceability from start to finish, just like we want. So it's underlying project governance, right? Okay, so like I said, I'm going to show you 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5 all at once, conceptually, all right? And here's the first concept I want to show you. This is change management in a big 40, 50,000 foot view, all right? What I'm doing here is this loop is the work in progress. This is the work in progress. Remember, we're executing the work now. So 4.3 is managing and managing directing work. This is those executing processes that we're going to talk about. As the work is going, we're creating that data that we talked about that becomes information here at the monitor control process. Two things could happen. Either everything's hunky-dory and we just keep on going and we report back to the project management plan, everything's fine, or we need to generate a change request. In any case, we also can generate change requests, by the way. Well, first off, let me talk about the ones that are generated here out of 4.4. Mostly these are the CAPAs. These are the ones, these are the corrective and preventive actions that come here. All change requests, and I'll say it here, I'll say it again later in the lecture, all changes must be written up. This is for the exam now. They all must be written up for impact, for time, for cost, for quality, for however the proposed change is going to impact the project. It has to be written up, and that's your job as the project manager to write up the impacts so that the change control board, at 4.5, can review it and approve or disapprove it. It's going to be a formal board here in 4.5. All changes, so no matter how they word the question, all changes are subject to integrated change control, all of them, okay? And if it's an approved change, let me go back, I'm sorry. If it's an approved change, if it's approved through integration change control, it's put into the workflow, okay? Let me show you in a much deeper. Managing changes in integration management is execution of the baseline plan and change control. So it's corrective actions and preventive actions, bring everything back on course, right? So that's the one feedback loop this is the second feedback. We talk ad nauseum, really, a progressive elaboration. Here we're now talking about CAPAs. These are where we did our calculations and we're falling behind or something to that effect. We're telling us that we need to do further analysis. Something's not right, okay? Defect repair, fixing, repair. So we're measuring conformance as well, okay? And there's always the effect of progressive elaboration. Okay, this is a great screen, folks. And it's 8:15, I'll get through this screen in a few of the processes. I put this screen together, and what it is the sausage factory all in one screen, explained in regular guy language. I kind of think I earned my money when I put this screen together, okay? And see if you agree with me. If this doesn't kind of show a whole big picture, maybe make a whole lot of sense to you. This line I just put here is just a project in a straight line, right? If we weren't doing anything else, project management plan, let's assume is our plan. We've put it all together and we're ready to execute it. So we go ahead and we start to assign the work and we create a workflow until we're ready to give our deliverables, right? This is the flow of that, member of a generic project life cycle, right? Without the monitor and control process here. We just planned it, we executed it, and we delivered it, right? Here, we we're going to actually execute the project using the methodology, these execution processes. So 4.3 is the gatekeeper of the execution process group. We are going to apply these 8 processes directed by 4.3. While we're doing these processes, we're measuring the work. We're creating data, right? Work is being completed, and we're creating data, and we're getting feedback from the field in the form of data. This is the beginning of the loop that I'm talking about: data, information, information, and the reports. That's why I showed it to you and why it's so important. The work is beginning to move along, and we're measuring its progress. So the data now goes over to the control processes that are controlled by the monitor and control process. These 11 control processes, they are also controlled by the project management plans we know. So the data that we extrapolate from the moving work is measured against the control processes, and 2 things can happen. Either we generate the change request, just like I showed you in the last screen, or we send off performance reports and updates back to the beginning of the processes again. If we send a change request, where does it go? By the way, I wanted to point out that you can also have these change requests comes right out of the execution process. I'm going to show you that. These are more progressive elaboration still. That's why, so we never really leave progressive elaboration. Change requests we see out of the workflow mainly in nature or scope additions. Here, they're mainly kappas. If you see what I mean, is that as I'm doing the work, I might say, you know what, we need to do this, we need to add that, we should put this trim in, we should have done that. Those are the type of change requests I may see here. These are more performance-based. These changes here are more performance-based, okay? So that's really the difference. And know that for the exam so that they're going to be asking about processes. So know where you're at. Am I executing? Am I controlling? Am I turning data information, or am I turning information into reports? Ask these little questions and it'll tell you where you're at in this cycle here. This is this little sausage factory in one little screen. Before I leave this screen, does everybody see this? Do you guys see this, and you see what I did here? Do you understand data? Good.
Yep. You're talking change control. You're talking my world.
Good, exactly, especially these processes here. But so let's go ahead and jump into the execution process. By the way, again, I showed you that if we approve the changes, they go right back into the workflow. And we're going to measure those new approved changes, by the way, for their effectiveness, right? We put them in. Did we get our money's worth for them? Were they good changes? Well, it's a lesson to learn too, right? So let's look at some of the processes. And like I said, I want to be cognizant of time because we are going to stop at 8:30. It's 8:19. We're going to get through a few of these processes. The integration management process, like I said, if you look at each of the process groups, and Vargas is a great drawing for that, you can see it's like that gatekeeper process, the one in black, right? That basically coordinates the efforts of the rest of the other processes within that process group. And so that's the real power of integration management. And when we're in the execution process group, it's here, 4.3, that we're directing and manage process work. So what we're looking at here is the project management plan. Those approved changes that came out of that change control board. We'll talk about the change control board in depth, especially what you need to know for the exam on Monday when we finish up the methodology. And then, of course, you have to concern yourself with your organization, because now we're directing and managing people and processes and things like that. So really it has major effects, okay? Expert judgment, there it is again. And we're even out of planning, and we still have expert judgment to worry about as a tool and technique. And again, it's so vague, yet so powerful. So, but know it, and you see it 100 times. PM information system, that's the MS project, right? So I'm going to use project to automatically, and I'm going to send out my work assignments and receive my work reports and update my project plan. Remember I told you about earned value. Never mind, maybe I'm going to confuse it. Just use PM information system to direct and manage work. So as work goes out, you're assigning work, and as work comes back in, you're you're taking that progress as earned value, okay, in your project plan. And MS Project's also doing your earned value calculations for you. The only place you're ever going to do hand calculations is on this test, okay? The endless meetings, of course, endless meetings. The output of 4.3 was just like I showed you in the first line of the diagram in the last screen, the deliverables. It's the end of the project, right? You direct and manage project work until such time as there's nothing left to do, right? And there's nothing but deliver. We deliver. While we're performing, we're generating all that data. That's the beginning of the loop. Data, information, the reports. I'm sorry to keep saying it, but it really is the best way to understand the sausage factory and understand the questions that they're going to ask you. Because when they're asking you questions in the exam, you want to know, where am I in the methodology? What are you asking me? Is this an execution process you're asking me about, or a control process? And the nature of the question will tell you that, if nothing else, okay? You're also, of course, here and the output is project management plan updates and project document updates, so the buckets, right? Okay, so now let's look at the real processes. And again, we have 10 minutes. We're not going to finish these because few of these are touchy-feely, right? Some of the things I talked about in 9.1, we were planning the things around. Here, as you can see, 9.2, 3, and 4, they make sense. This is what I would do with human resources in the execution portion of my project. I would acquire my project team. I'd actually say, I would argue that that's also a planning process, but it resides in the execution process group for the test. I'm saying that I'm acquiring my project team while I'm still planning, wouldn't you think? But I'm not, I didn't build the methodology. I'm also going to manage my project team. And that's basically the day-to-day, taking them in, making sure that the nuts and bolts and everything are being done. But develop project team, that's where I'm growing people, with training, with mentoring, with recognition, with, team things, those kinds of activities. So let's move into those three processes. And PMBOK kind of leans on this a lot. They're trying to be trendy. They're trying to be progressive. So they're all about, you and how you handle human resources. So the diversity thing and the differences of cultures and all those things that you're supposed to be, you're going to see a handful of questions on it, kind of testing your progressiveness. All right, in a way, answer the question in the most progressive way you can when it comes to treating human resources. You should anyway. People should treat each other with respect, but I just don't see bending over backwards in a lot of cases. I don't agree with some of the things that are done. I grew up a working man, and I came to work with the expectation that I was going to work today, that I didn't come here to be pampered, and I don't mean to give soapbox here, but I did come to work with the expectation I was going to work today. And so I do. And I don't know. When you acquire a project team, you're doing team selection and assignments. So you're looking remember when you were talking about that resource breakdown structure? This is where you're starting to look at some of first off, the skill sets you need. And then if you know your organization, who are the best of those skill sets? You start to lay the groundwork to bring those particular people onto your project, okay? Lead in concepts. And the PM needs to be influenced and negotiate to acquire the team. So if in a functional organization especially, you're probably going to see questions like this, that within those matrixed organizations, remember, you'll have a varying levels of authority starting from the weak up to strong. They may ask a question in that vein for you acquiring a project team. You're pretty much going to have to go in and work out a deal or work out a relationship with the functional manager, because they're really the bosses in the matrix organizations, and that there were dual reportings that you got to take into consideration. We went over that in the fundamentals. I'm touching on it again because you may see questions like that flavored that way. Remember, the key to why they would ask you about matrix organizations is because of the varying level of authority and responsibility. So for you to answer the question so the question's being asked of you to answer it as an associate and not as a senior. Okay. Okay. Failure to acquire will cause delays. So just like forgetting a stakeholder, forgetting a requirement, and trying, especially if it's a major one, and trying to bake it in later, not good. Okay. You may need to use less desirable experienced or competent staff, particularly once you're underway. You may not get the people you want, yeah, but you got to keep your project moving along. So you may use less. If you do that, you want to compensate. You want to compensate. So a little more hand holding or something. All right. But you got to be flexible in acquiring your project team. In any case, you need to fill the staff requirements. So when you did your progressive elaboration and you identified the roles that you need and the skill sets, those are the ones you got to fill one way or another. Okay. So we look at the process. Again, it's a lot has to do with the HR plan and your organization here. Pre-assignment, sometimes you have them already assigned to your project early, sometimes you don't. The negotiation part, like I just said with your functional managers, acquisition can come from outside the company. So they say, when they say acquisition, they mean generically, how do I bring people in to a project? Maybe it's somebody I bring in from a staffing agency, temp agency. It's a colleague of mine that I brought in from my own networks, that kind of thing. Remember virtual teams. And again, PMI wants you to be able to think in terms of virtual teams that are spread out everywhere, that have different languages and cultures and time zones and things like that. And you need to be sensitive to all of that, okay? That's me. I'm Mr. Sensitive. Multi-criteria decision analysis with your project team, because I'm going to try to come up with the best people I need to make sure that they do fill the skills that I need. So I'm going to use matrices, right? I'm going to use weighted criteria and that kind of thing. My outputs of 9-2 are my project staff assignments. So the staff requirements that I defined earlier, I'm filling them here, okay? And those resource calendars. So the assignments, I'm putting this all in your Outlook or your SharePoint already. You're already assigned ahead of time, and the system will automatically kick off that task when it's ready to go. Okay, and of course the effect of progressive elaboration. We talk about developing your project team. What time is it? See if I don't want to. You know what? I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to stop right here because I don't want to start one that I can't finish. Okay, is that fair enough, folks?
Yep.
I know I was talking fast on it. That's because I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to make up because I said our SPI is only 0.92, right? So I'm trying to catch up here a little bit. I don't mean to talk fast, but I did go over some things tonight. We're going to pick up where we left off on Monday. We will definitely be finished through the methodology through the first half of the lecture will be done. Okay, so we'll be through the methodology and ready to start at the end of the break to start in the review. So a whole second half of Monday, and remember the last lecture is Wednesday. So you guys are really only 6 days away from being 6 calendar days away from finishing this class and being certified, my certificate anyway. So congratulations. Congratulations for getting through the planning process. We're done already. Any questions, anything I can help you guys with? I know I've been lax. I know some personal emergencies happen, but you can be sure that you will get some problems from me this weekend now that we've gotten this far and I've showed you the financial calculations and things. I'm going to send you some earned values. I'm going to send you some financials, send you maybe a network diagram or two to draw. Not many. I just want to, because you're really going to do a lot of that on your own after I just want to know that you know how to do it. And if you're doing a backwards pass and you're like, damn it, I forgot what Clark showed me. Now's the time to catch those kind of mistakes. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm good on that, but also I'm going to tell you, the guy from my study group for the network diagram, he also did it instead of the ABC. The PMP does it as in 1, 2, 3s also tries to confuse you. Just
Okay.
wanted to throw that at you.
I see. So the tasks are numbered instead of lettered.
Sometimes the task, it is lettered, and then some of it is numbered. So instead of the ABC, it's 1, 2, 3s. And then that's basically confusion.
Well, you know what? Just sit on the curveball. It's an 0-2 count. You know, let me use baseball as an analogy. You're not going to get a fastball. Okay? You're going to get a curveball. Sit on it. And get ready for it. Don't let stuff like that unnerve you. It's just a designation, right? It still works the same way.
But so, we were practicing last night, so that's what I wanted to share with you.
Appreciate it, man. You have a wealth. Your probably fingers are in a lot more resources than I've even seen. But like I said, I'm going to send you some. I want to send you a couple of my favorite resources. Just a few of them. PM Study is one of them. Quizlet's another. So I'm going to send you a couple of, I don't know, I guess a total of 10 problems or so, 10, 12 problems, and a couple of websites, okay, this weekend. We're getting close,
Cool.
folks. If
Yeah,
there's-
Aubrey's making me feel like a slacker.
No, I'm not trying to make anybody. I just have a lot of useful things, and I've got a lot of people pushing me behind to get this done.
Well, the truth of the matter is, it's a big internet out there, and there is a lot out there. So there's a lot of places with free tests, but I would warn you, okay, that some of them only give you 3 questions and want you to sign up or something. Don't you do the 3 questions and then go somewhere else. So many of them out there will give you 50 free ones, 100 free ones, 200 free ones. They're out there. Okay, I'm going to give you a few of those sites too next week. All right, I don't want to give you too much to look at, but once you're out of my class, I want you just go out there and reinforce everything I showed you. And there's a lot of it out there to help you reinforce. A lot of it. Okay. Like I said, look for my email over the weekend. I'm going hoarse, folks, so I'm kind of done. It's 8:32. Thanks to both of you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You have a good night.
Thanks, Clark. Have a good night.
My pleasure, Jill. See you guys on Monday, and I'll send you something out this weekend. Take care, guys.